Yo, it's your boy JTG, aka Jay the God, one half of the illest tag team ever, Crime Time, and you are watching Pro Wrestling Planet. And we all know Pro Wrestling Planet is about that money. Yeah, that money. Yeah. Cheer!
Stone Cold Steve Austin is arguably the most over superstar in recent history of the wrestling business. Austin's run on top will forever be remembered, although it was unfortunately short-lived. While many of the top stars through the last 40 years have popped in and out of the ring well into their senior years, Stone Cold was forced into early retirement in 2003 and has not returned to a wrestling ring to this day. So in this video, I'll take you through the man's journey from growing up to breaking into the business and then to mega superstardom. This is the wrestling career of Steve Austin. Austin was born Steve Anderson, but at a young age was given the surname of Williams, which was the name of Steve's stepfather. Steve grew up in a small town of Edna, Texas, with 3 brothers and a sister. Steve played football as a teen, which he parlayed into a scholarship with the University of North Texas. Football didn't work out for Steve, and he ended up joining Chris Adams' wrestling school after seeing an ad on World Class Championship Wrestling TV. Steve at first worked as Steve Williams before being renamed Steve Austin by Dutch Mantel. Austin would work between WCCW and the USWA for the first couple years of his career, and he looked so good that he ended up scoring a contract with WCW in 1991, where he was given a valet and renamed Stunning Steve Austin. At first, he was paired with a woman named Vivacious Veronica, but was later joined by Lady Blossom, who would end up becoming Austin's real-life spouse. Austin was given a decent push seemingly out of the gate as he captured the WCW TV title in June of 1991 and was shortly after put into a stable with Paul Heyman known as the Dangerous Alliance. Austin made his rounds with 2 lengthy reigns as the TV champion during this time, bringing solid work to the WCW mid-card. After losing the WCW TV title for a second time, the Dangerous Alliance was disbanded, and Austin was ready to climb the ladder as a singles competitor, but instead, when arriving to a WCW TV taping, found that he was paired with Brian Pillman in a tag team. The duo decided they were going to make the best of the situation and try to be the best tag team they could be. And Austin and Pillman were given the name of the Hollywood Blondes, even though Austin was from Texas and Pillman was from Ohio. Regardless, Austin and Pillman became a force to be reckoned with in the WCW tag team division. Whether they were designed to or not, people's heads were turned. Austin and Pillman captured the WCW tag team championships and were fairly over as a mid-card tag team. Like most tag teams, they eventually split, with Austin staying heel and Pillman moving to more of a babyface role. From there, Austin joined his second stable while in WCW by joining Colonel Robert Parker's Stud Stable. Austin was still on his way up, and at Starrcade in December of 1993, Austin defeated Dustin Rhodes to capture the WCW United States Championship. It seems like from there, the WCW hierarchy had little idea how to transition Austin into the main event picture. Austin held down that mid-card to upper mid-card and reignited his feud with Ricky Steamboat, who he lost the U.S. Championship to, only to regain it at Fall Brawl 1994 for a few minutes until being knocked down by Jim Duggan of all guys. WCW kept Austin in the U.S. title picture for the first 6 months of 1995 until releasing him in June of that year. Austin was sitting out with an injury, and while sitting at home was fired over the phone by Eric Bischoff, and this is something that Austin would famously use as a motivation to plan his next move, which was a stop in Philadelphia in Extreme Championship Wrestling. It's well documented that after Austin being fired as a matter of chance, Paul Heyman was the first to contact Steve afterwards, and the rest is history. Austin came up to ECW and cut a series of promos that some say got him his job with the WWE months later. Truth is somewhere in between, as Jim Ross had his eye on Austin for a long time and was excited to bring him into the WWE. And after Austin served the back half of 1995 in ECW, and then in January of 1996, the WWE and Vince McMahon were finally ready for him, or were they? Turns out at first, not even Vince McMahon knew what to do with Austin, as he was brought in as the quote-unquote ringmaster, which Austin secretly hated, but went with it anyway, because it's just so dang hard to say no to Vince McMahon. Now, the idea behind the ringmaster was solid enough. Austin was thought of as a master technician in the ring, and Vince saw this and decided that that should be his gimmick, was that he was the quote-unquote the master of the ring. But the name was terrible, and Austin failed to connect with the character. Also, Austin was paired with the $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase, as a manager and mouthpiece. And that was something that Austin didn't necessarily need, but allegedly Vince McMahon did not like Austin's southern accent, and that was that. Austin was given the $1 Million Championship and toiled in the undercard oblivion in a WWE product that was getting increasingly stale, and Vince, to his credit, pumped the brakes on the ringmaster rather quickly. At the urging of Austin, was given a chance to remake his gimmick under a new name. Now, Vince McMahon or the writing team, someone was famously responsible for producing a list of names that were even worse than the ringmaster, which included Chili McFreeze and Fang McFrost. Yes, I'm totally serious about that. Because you see, all Austin knew is that he wanted to become an Iceman type character. With all this in mind, as the story goes, Austin is thinking about all this in his head while drinking tea with his wife, when she mutters the words that Austin better drink his tea before it became stone cold, and that was it. The rest was history. So Stone Cold Steve Austin was born, and Austin spent the rest of 1996 embellishing and improving his character, including the famous promo at King of the Ring in June of 1996, where he proclaimed to Jake the Snake Roberts that Austin 316 said, "I just whipped your ass." The Stone Cold character would become a part of many groundbreaking angles and shock TV, as the WWE would cruise into the Attitude Era less than 2 years later. Before that could happen, though, Austin had to get through 1997, which was a pivotal year for him, as he started the year by winning the Royal Rumble. And even though he did not receive a title shot at WrestleMania, he took part in a classic with Bret Hart, where Hart turned heel and Austin turned babyface. Austin in the summer of 1997 would capture the tag team championships twice, once with Shawn Michaels and the other time with Mick Foley as Dude Love. Then in SummerSlam of August of 1997, tragedy struck, and Stone Cold was never quite the same again, as he was dropped on his head by an errant pile driver delivered by Owen Hart, and Austin would somehow escape possible paralyzation and even death, and somehow, some way made it back to the ring just 3 months later in November of 1997 at Survivor Series. Austin won his second Intercontinental title that night by defeating Owen Hart, and Stone Cold was off to the races yet again, and the Rocket this time was firmly attached and the push of a lifetime was about to commence. In January of 1998, Austin won a second Royal Rumble match, this time sans controversy, and would go on to wrestle Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania 14 in March of 1998. And after defeating Michaels, Austin won his first ever WWE Championship. The next night on Raw, Austin would go head first into a full-on feud with owner Vince McMahon, the seeds of which had been sown for months with the rise of Austin's character, coupled with the fact that Vince McMahon had become a legitimate heel in many fans' eyes after the events that took place during the Montreal Screwjob. Austin would tease a match with Mr. McMahon, but an official encounter between the two wouldn't take place until February of 1999, and Austin would spend 1998 feuding with Mick Foley, Kane, and The Undertaker. The Rock was then positioned as the top heel in the company by aligning with the McMahons, and the stage was set for Austin to take on The Rock at WrestleMania 15 in March of 1999, where Austin would regain and capture the WWE Championship for his third run. Austin and the WWE would keep doing stellar business in 1999, and Austin would end up losing the championship at SummerSlam in August of 1999. After that, Austin would settle into a feud with Triple H that was ultimately cut short because Austin was wrestling on a neck that probably needed to be surgically repaired since the accident in August of 97. This left Austin off WWE TV for an extended period of time, a time when the company was at its apex, you could argue. He was sadly missing out on some of the fruits that were indeed his own labor. And Austin would return to do a run-in at Backlash in April of 2000, but would not return to the ring officially until September of that same year. From there, he continued his program with Triple H, and this set up Austin winning his third Royal Rumble match in January of 2001. And after some title switching, the WrestleMania 17 match was set to be an epic babyface versus babyface encounter between Austin and The Rock, which was a rematch of the WrestleMania 15 Classic, but with new elements, as both wrestlers went into the match as clear babyfaces. According to Austin, it was himself who pushed for a change in his character, and on the night of WrestleMania 17, after defeating The Rock, Austin turned heel by aligning with Mr. McMahon. This turn shocked fans all around and was an overall disappointment. Now, the original plan was to have Austin and Triple H work as a heel team. However, Triple H would injure his quad in April of 2001, and those plans, whatever they were, ended up in the trash, and instead Austin was positioned as a turncoat in the Invasion storyline that existed after WWE's purchase of WCW in March of 2001. Austin ran with things and started having fun as the leader of the Alliance. He introduced a more comedic side to his character, and due to that situation, he ended up being more of a tweener character than a full-fledged heel. The Alliance storyline lasted until November of 2001, and from there, Austin was strangely the odd man out, it would seem. As the company built to WrestleMania 18, Austin was removed from the title picture as Chris Jericho was being pushed as the top heel, and ultimately the fall guy for the returning Triple H. The decision was made to have Austin work with Scott Hall, who along with Hulk Hogan and Kevin Nash had just re-debuted as the WWE's version of the NWO. Hogan was slated to work with The Rock, and this left Austin to work with Hall. Austin viewed this as a type of demotion, you have to think, but continued to work through it. But you could tell Austin was at a turning point in his life and career. Shortly after that, Austin became a bit disgruntled. He was given a program with Eddie Guerrero, which was something that interested Austin. But then, in the summer of 2002, Austin was allegedly asked to lose to a fresh rookie, Brock Lesnar, on Raw. And Austin was not pleased with the idea, as he felt that it was not good business for him to lose for no reason with no build-up on television, which is really one of those classic wrestler things that just happens from time to time, especially with the big stars. Some may call it ego or what have you. Either way, Austin walked out of the company and created quite a stir among fans and people in the company. Vince McMahon felt the need to bury Austin on TV by calling him out and saying that he, quote-unquote, took his ball and went home. This was coupled with personal trouble in Austin's life, as he was brought up with spousal abuse allegations. This was definitely a dark time for Austin and McMahon's business relationship. Austin has also come out in recent years saying that he was clashing with everyone at this time, including spats with The Rock, and overall disgruntlement with Triple H taking a more prominent role in the company because he was now, Vince's son-in-law. Austin would return in early 2003 to set up a third and final WrestleMania match with The Rock, who returned himself at the time as a snobbish Hollywood heel. This would end up being Austin's final match, as the damage from the neck injuries over the years was just too much, and with medical advisement, as well as what I'm sure he felt within himself, Austin retired. And Steve Austin would return to TV months later in a non-official role as the co-general manager of Raw with Eric Bischoff. And here they basically tried to relive the Austin versus McMahon magic, but instead did it with Eric Bischoff. This role came to an end in 2004 and would be Austin's last permanent role with the company as an on-screen performer. Austin still makes sporadic appearances for WWE and was used for a lot of years as a special guest referee in big matches, usually being a WrestleMania match. And you can usually count on a beer or two being chugged and a Stone Cold Stunner or two given when Austin shows up on WWE TV. Austin has kept himself pretty busy outside of the business, as he has appeared in multiple movies, TV shows, and has a very successful podcast, is now tied to the WWE, I believe, officially. So that, I think, about does it. I could go on and on about the guy because I personally love him, and as I was at the ripe age during the Austin era and got to enjoy every second of it as it was happening. So in closing, I want you guys to let me know your favorite Stone Cold match or promo or even moment down in the comments. Make sure to do that. Make sure to subscribe. Until we catch you next time on Pro Wrestling Planet.